sort of grounding background on where we're going here at American Promise, and I think in this country. This is not a stock photo. It looks too good to be true, but I took this picture of these amazing young people. They're high school students in Concord, Massachusetts. They led the American Promise Patriots Day parade, carrying the banners, carrying the flags, filled with hope, filled with determination. And Patriots Day parade honors April 19th. For those of us in Massachusetts, I see Massachusetts in the house, and New England, it's a holiday. And we honor the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the beginning as we, in our, any city that calls itself the hub of the universe, as Boston does, tends to think we started the revolution on that day. It's more complicated, but we'll take that. And the American Revolution and its revolutionary promise of government of, for, and by the people, again faces challenges, but again, Americans like these amazing young people and the people who are here today and around the country are picking up that challenge and making sure that we don't lose it on our watch, but we make it even better than ever. And so, behind these challenges that we face today, that's the way it is. Every time I think generations think, oh, we're the first ones to have to just have these insurmountable struggles. But that is the nature maybe of humanity, but certainly of the American story. And in those challenging times, I think in the most challenging times is when we make the most progress. It's almost as if, like we've done today, we put aside maybe our business, maybe our jobs to come together to actually say there's a red alert sounding, and just like 1775, the bell has been strung and struck, and people come together and say, okay, what do we got to do? And it's not easy, and over and over and over again. That's what Americans have done, and that's what we are doing now. And strands of this reform, I'm confident that we will see, and we are already seeing the outlines of a very bright future for America that will look different in a lot of ways and will be doing government of the people differently. There's just massive amounts of reform happening right now, and civic renewal happening right now. And so over these next 2 days, we're going to meet a lot of the people doing it. We're going to meet, there's hundreds of organizations now that didn't exist even 5-10 years ago. There's millions of people who voted for not only American Promise's constitutional amendment, but concepts people weren't talking about 10 years ago, like ranked choice voting or open primaries or forming citizens commissions to stop gerrymandering or fighting for voting rights and the voice of the voter. It's happening all over the country. And so connecting us together is what we're doing here, and it's what we do at American Promise. It's what our partners and sponsors do as well. So freedom, unity, civic courage, that's the theme of this conference. And it is the theme of, I think, what's going on in the country right now, because I think freedom is feeling threatened, both personally, our sense as a people that we are having a bit of a struggle for freedom to actually prosper and succeed, and it's partly so hard because we are struggling with unity and civic courage, and adversaries are exploiting that. But here, we're not. In this room are people from all over the country, all different walks of life, all different political viewpoints. And so we won't have freedom if we don't have civic courage and if we don't have unity. Those will go together. So many of you are bringing those concepts together in your own work, in your own life. And we're seeing not only those kind of reforms that I mentioned that didn't even exist a few years ago being executed by many people and our co-sponsors and organizations that have come together to help sponsor this conference. But we're also seeing a growing movement with a new civics, a new commitment to civics in America, and a bridging movement, a movement that says, and we forgot to say silence your phones, and I realized that one's not me, but it could have been. I don't think I did silence. But this bridging movement is actually embracing something that we do at American Promise too, which is let's not pretend we agree. Let's not pretend we don't have serious disagreements. Let's not pretend we have the same politics or the same vision of every policy. And in that disagreement and debate, let's remember the things that connect us. Remember the things that bind us together, and remember how much we can do if we just, accept our disagreements, debate them, argue them out, but argue them out as fellow citizens and human beings on this earth. And that's what the bridging movement is doing so powerfully. So we thank all of our co-sponsors from across these reforms, across these civic and bridging movements, and across the business world and other civic life where people, as I said, and their organizations are stepping in to answer the call, answer the emergency. Now, there's a lot going on, but I want to say something about our constitutional solution at American Promise, because we do need freedom, we do need unity, we do need courage, but as always in America, it has to rest on a constitutional foundation. And it won't work to say that we stand for freedom for everybody, or that we put voters first, or that we even respect all Americans, if we leave a constitutional disaster that strips Americans and our states of the right and the power to have effective anti-corruption laws. It won't work if we don't take on the challenge that there's a connected, elite, political donor class that is making the rules for everybody else. But that constitutional problem is exactly what the Supreme Court has created. We have a constitutional fork in the road if we want to actually have freedom, unity, and civic courage and continue the American promise. The court's mistakes have invented a new constitutional right that never existed, supposedly of free speech, of the very few to spend unlimited money to drown out most Americans and corrupt our campaigns, our communities, our elections, and our ability to even govern ourselves or even talk to each other. Most of the billions of dollars from this reckless experiment are going to toxic, divisive campaigns that are intended to drive fear and loathing into the American electorate. So let's look at some of the results of this experiment in a new constitutional right of free speech for the very few to dominate the many. Senate races are now topping 200 million as an entry level. Some of them are going to 500 million. That pink line that you can barely see, that was only 10 years ago of the most expensive races in America, and that was pretty surprising 10 years ago. Look where it's going now. Look at the acceleration, the velocity of this money system that we now have. Most of this money comes from a very small, as I said, donor class, a group of billionaires, large corporations, some of the biggest unions, and now even foreign adversaries, as we'll see in a few minutes, with no connection to the states where they're spending the money, locked in a battle for power in Washington. In 2020, $14 billion was spent in that election, twice as much as the last cycle. It'll be twice as much again in 24. And yesterday, our partners at Open Secrets, who are here today, thank you, Open Secrets announced their estimate and prediction that we will see the midterms just by November costing $9.3 billion. Again, a record, and this will not stop without a constitutional solution. Both parties are running dark money, secret operations. That is accelerating. There is no honorable or good side in this. The Democrats now are 2-1 in dark money against Republicans. That reversed from earlier, a few years ago. That could reverse again. This is now locked into the both-party system. Civic Trust has collapsed. And without a constitutional solution, it'll be hard to get that back. But right now, Civic Trust has collapsed. And most Americans feel that they've lost their free speech rights. They're under an avalanche, as our friend David Trahan in Maine says. Under an avalanche where they can't be heard and they can't hear each other. So this corruption crisis requires a constitutional solution, and that's what we're doing. So it's the For Our Freedom Amendment, and B, if you could move to the next slide, we'll see our 4R Freedom Amendment and what it does. And it solves this problem. It's not a one solution. There are no one magic solution where we don't have to do everything else. It's a necessary constitutional solution, though, and it's happening. Since we were last together at the National Citizen Leadership Conference, we've accelerated our strategy. And the beauty of this is, though, as Bill mentioned, constitutional amendments are hard, but there's nothing that unifies us more than this. There's nothing that calls on our civic courage more than a constitutional amendment. So it's a massive opportunity. B, if we could go to the next one. Our friends at Citizen Data are here, Mindy Finn. You'll hear more from her. But we've done work with Citizen Data in multiple states nationally. There is virtually no daylight between Republicans, Democrats, independents, that they want, we want this constitutional amendment, and we want it done now. Just last week, we'll go to the next slide, Republicans and Democrats in Pennsylvania joined to introduce in the state legislature, Republicans led the way, it's a Republican-controlled legislature, to introduce one of our resolutions calling on Congress to take action now to pass this constitutional amendment, get it back to the states for ratification. Pennsylvania will be the 23rd state to do this. 22 states have done this. It's following our strategy of make it local, bring it back home, let people take action on this in the states. And that is our strategy. Let me outline, as I close, the major points of this. Number one, we have to decide to win. You know, you'll go out of here fired up for a constitutional amendment. You'll talk to somebody, and they'll say, oh, wow, that sounds impossible. They'll roll their eyes. A constitutional amendment, how are we going to do that? We're too divided. Well, now we'll be able to tell them how we're going to do that. But the key is that we decide to win. Everybody wants this, just about. Very few don't. So decide to win, and we will make it happen. The biggest obstacle to success on this effort, as in others, is feeling that deciding in advance that it can't be done. And that's convenient because then you don't have to try, but it's the biggest obstacle. So decide to win and then go about it. That's what we do. That's what we did when we launched. Make it personal, make it local, use networks, build trust, include everyone, empower everyone to be a citizen leader. No organization is going to get this done. Americans are going to get it done. And that's why this is the National Citizen Leadership Conference. You'll meet many amazing citizen leaders here today. Choose or help the American people be heard in elections. Tons of ways to do that in farmers markets, rotaries, chambers, healthcare centers, social work conferences. Everywhere Americans connect together. Take a hand in or help contribute to some of the volunteer-driven campaigns. We've won 6 ballot initiatives among those 22 states. We have never lost a ballot initiative. When the people get to decide this, they go for it big time. And we've spent very little money compared to the ballot initiative world. We have a volunteer-driven model. We spend a fraction of what most ballot campaigns spend, and we've never lost